I gotta tell you, usually the job of recommending something to someone is pretty simple. I mean, yeah, there's certain unique elements to every piece of media that'll make it so, some people will like it and others won't, but usually it boils down to a simple question. Is it good? Thing is, sometimes that isn't enough, and you have to be a bit more convincing in order to get people to experience something, even if that something is of great quality. Which brings me nicely along to our subject today, Kinnikuman Perfect Origin Arc, an actually fantastic shonen battle anime with a first season that sadly was a disappointment in viewership. I'll explain why later, but first a plot synopsis. 18 months after the battle for the throne of planet Kinniku, the Justice, Devil, and Perfect Chojin Leagues have formed a peace agreement with each other. Before people can start popping the champagne, however, peace is broken once again by the arrival of the Perfect Large Numbers, the strongest among the Perfect Chojin, who see all other life forms as inherently inferior and refuse the peace agreement. Despite being reluctant at first, Terry Man is forced to break the truce and engage the Perfect Large Numbers in combat. A while afterwards, the previously injured Buffalo Man comes back, only he has seemingly abandoned the Justice Chojin and gone back to his previous league, the Devil Chojin, who are joining the fight with a hidden objective. Thus begins a fierce three-way battle between the groups that promises to shake the very foundations of Chojin society. With this crisis looming over the horizon, Kinnikuman can no longer remain in retirement, and the legendary hero once again leaps into action against both the Devil Chojin and the Perfect Large Numbers. Alright, now show of hands, who understood anything I just said? You see, that's the biggest caveat with Perfect Origin Arc. Despite the name, it's not the first arc of Kinnikuman, not by a country mile. Here's a little history lesson. You know Ultraman, right? Big silver dude, shoots lasers. I reviewed his movie a while ago. Well, he's crazy popular in Japan, and once stuff gets crazy popular, you're bound to get copycats, homages, and parodies. Kinnikuman started off as a parody of Ultraman. The title character is an alien superhero who fought monsters, just like Ultraman, except he was this stupid and cowardly guy with a dumb design. The whole thing was very simple and kind of childish, but it became very successful nonetheless. And then, in one of the craziest pivots I've ever seen a piece of media take, the duo behind the series, Yude Temago, decided, hey, you know this kiddie Ultraman parody we made? What if we turned it into a manga about people with superpowers wrestling? And thus, we had one of the earliest examples of the shonen battle manga. Just so we're clear, Kinnikuman started publication in 1979. That's just 2 years after the release of A New Hope. Kinnikuman was out here fighting evil before Indiana Jones ever set foot in a tomb, before the majority of people knew what the hell the Avengers were, and 5 years before the first chapter of Dragon Ball was released. So yeah, needless to say, the pivot paid off, and the series reached new heights of popularity, even gaining an anime adaptation back in the day. So, alright, they finished the original run, and decades afterwards, Yude Temago teamed up once again to basically continue the manga right where it left off with Perfect Origin Arc. Literally, they don't even change the title or reset the numbering or anything, the manga just continues. There's an 18-month time skip, but other than that, it's the same characters, the same world, and the same story. That, I think, is the explanation for the poor viewership. People outside Japan just don't know much about Kinnikuman, and starting off with a story that takes place literally years into the greater narrative feels weird. It'd be like starting Dragon Ball with the Buu saga. If people my age were exposed to anything related to Kinnikuman, it was probably Ultimate Muscle, which is kind of like the Boruto of the series, a what-if future scenario starring the characters as kids, which I'm pretty sure is now considered non-canonical, so yeah, that doesn't help matters much. And look, I get it, right? All of you know how much I dig continuity, and if you're like me, there's that nerdy itch in the back of your skull telling you to either read the entire series or not bother reading it at all. Having tried it for a while, I promise you, and I mean I promise you it isn't worth it. The first few dozen chapters of Kinnikuman really are very childish and not very funny by today's standards. I'm sure it must have made Japanese kids bust a gut laughing back in the 70s, but nowadays you'd be hard pressed to enjoy it, honestly. You can understand what's going on in the anime pretty well by just picking up on context clues, and the whole first episode is actually just a recap of the story up to that point. You can also find longer YouTube videos which really break the full story down. So yeah, I mean, the information's out there, you just kind of have to, search for it. But, if the idea of doing research to truly get the story discourages you, I implore you to stick with it if you enjoy the shonen battle genre. Because Kinnikuman starts off a dumb parody manga, right? Then it evolves into the grandfather of modern shonen, with a rudimentary formula that would later be perfected by the likes of DBZ and One Piece. And then, starting with continuation in 2011, it becomes one of the best shonen ever. No, I'm not joking. It's like Yuda Temago spent over 20 years just studying the hell out of the shonen formula they helped create and asking themselves, alright, now how can we take this stuff into the next level? They fix several problems a lot of shonen even to this day suffer from, such as an irrelevant supporting cast. You see all these character designs showing up on screen. Do you think any of them look cool? Well, you're in luck, because everyone gets a moment to shine in this series, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone! You see this guy, right? Atlantis is his name. You might think, whatever, fish dude, who cares? But then he has this actually incredible fight that not only has terrific choreography, but also fleshes out his character and gives him more depth. Characters have unique fighting styles and strategies that bounce off each other well to create these memorable encounters. If you enjoy the sort of weird power sets and 4D chess that a lot of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fights have, you see something very similar to that here. While we're on the subject of the supporting cast though, I'd just like to highlight how well the different factions and characters are written. One thing Kinnikuman more or less invented was the whole power of friendship thing, where our heroes' bond literally made them stronger. Thing is, who says this kind of stuff only applies to the heroes? Each faction's members all have a sense of camaraderie with each other, as well as some begrudging respect for the other factions. The characters are just very manly, is what I'm saying. They want to kick each other's asses, but only because they respect the hell out of each other. Well, except for the perfect large numbers, who believe all the other leagues are beneath them, which makes them nice, hateable villains, or heels, if I'm going to use the wrestling terminology. Kinnikuman, if I haven't made that point clear yet, is a wrestling series. It's like a real-life wrestling show, only animated, which means all the weird characters aren't just dudes in costumes, they're actual demons, cyborgs, and aliens. If you're a fan of wrestling and the unique kind of storytelling present in it, Kinnikuman offers that in spades. Speaking of weird characters though, another thing I think might have turned people away is the character designs. Being from the 70s and 80s, a lot of characters here follow a very Silver Age design mentality. Striking colors, memorable silhouettes, and just straight up weird looking dudes. Want a guy that looks like a cassette player? Or an actual honest to God toilet? Look no further. I've seen people say that the designs just cross the line and become too silly for them to take the fight seriously. And, you're of course entitled to feeling that way, but dude, you better not be a fan of One Piece if you're saying this, because that has some pretty silly designs and everyone loves it. I like the designs across the board and I think they're very distinctive. Speaking in terms of animation, it's competent throughout. None of it is poorly animated, but none of it crosses over into that crazy, stylish sakuga you might see in other shows. I don't mind its absence, to be frank, and the show looks great as it is. Voice acting is incredible, as is to be expected from Japan. The OP is memorable as hell, and the soundtrack in general is pretty nice. They even play the classic Kinnikuman opening from the 80s anime in the show during a fight. It's a great callback. In closing, Kinnikuman Perfect Origin Arc is a terrific shonen battle anime, and it's a crying shame it didn't get better ratings. There's a bit of backstory you have to learn before you can truly appreciate it, but the show goes to great lengths to teach you. You seriously owe it to yourself to check it out if you're a fan of the genre. I promise you won't regret it. Watch it, become a fan, and watch Season 2 once it drops next year so we can keep this stuff going. Well, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, were you aware of Kinnikuman before this video? Have you watched the anime or read the manga? Let me know in the comments, along with any other thoughts you might have on this video. It really helps out. Oh, and finally, Christmas is right around the corner, right? So join me next time as I talk about an adaptation of Dickens's A Christmas Carol, or maybe more than one adaptation. See you next time.